Yeah, there's literally people that
like,
they haven't liked a Star Wars movie since 1980.
We're in the middle of the third weekend of Solo.
Right? Oh yeah, I didn't even look at how it did. Like, so I didn't even look at the third weekend.
I really want to know if it lost to like
I'm sure it
Hereditary or Come On Han, old buddy, don't let me down.
I have a feeling you will.
Come on, Han, old buddy, don't let me down.
There's like nothing.
Is it that low?
I think you know what? I think it is. I think it's like they're trying to hide it.
Yeah, find it. I think a lot of people that feel like their work is done, they sent their message to Disney, are now just moving on. They're ready for Ant-Man 2 or something.
Yeah.
You know, because I mean, honestly, like, I'm very passionate about Disney understanding what their mistakes are, but I still want to see Solo at some point, you know, like, but I certainly don't want to give them money.
Yeah, we'll have that information way after everybody else has it. Be good.
Yeah. But for those of you who don't know, Solo is not profitable at the box office officially, correct? Like,
yeah. It's
I'm sure when you add up merchandising and all that stuff,
right. I mean,
Chewbacca playing in the NBA like adds up to a good amount of money.
In the end, they will make a profit. It's just not nearly what people expected, and the fact that they're going to have to rely on, you know, they might have to rely on post box office money to make a profit. That's kind of crazy. I mean, that might not be 100% true, but it's going to be close.
That's crazy. It's crazy.
It's crazy.
I just want to see like these like random horror movies compete with it, and I know something else came out other than Hereditary.
Oh, the Johnny Knoxville movie.
Oh, that's kind of
made like $100,000.
Let's see what this baby can do.
You know what? I hate to say it, but I would pay for the Lord and Miller version. I would probably see that.
I don't know.
Out of curiosity, you know.
I mean, yeah, I am curious as to what. Well, from what I've heard, the movie itself isn't that bad.
Yeah, it's okay. It's getting a lot of punishment for its father's mistakes.
Exactly.
Know what I mean? Like, and that's.
It's right. It's being. Yeah, what you just said.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of
no way to say it better.
A lot of those Star Wars, like these side stories, have a lot less writing on them. They're a lot less to prove.
Right.
They're just, you know, a Star Wars story. Here you go. It's a side thing in between the saga of stuff, but.
Yeah, and like Force Awakens it did, you know, there was a lot of, you know, people talk about, oh, J.J. Abrams mystery box stuff, and he left a lot of like mysteries, but in my mind, like, as, you know, a writer, which I'm not, I feel like that would be a great opportunity. It would almost be like you're setting, like, that's not, people say that as if like, man, J.J. Abrams just left all these questions that like, and it's hard to answer them, and it's like, yeah.
The thing is that it represents infinite possibility. It represents hope. It represents potential.
It's okay, good, a challenge for a good writer.
Yeah.
So if you're a good writer, that's great. You want a challenge. Like, it'd be like if Michael Jordan, like, okay, you're going to play against an elementary school team. And it's like, oh, I don't want that. Like, I would rather do something difficult to show how great I am and to, you know, build my legacy. And, like, why? So I've actually heard people say that, though, where they apologize for Rian Johnson by saying, oh, J.J. Abrams, like, left all these cliffhangers that you couldn't tie up. And it's like, no, that's not true, though. He just didn't want to, like, everybody had all these theories, and he didn't want to use any of them because in his mind, I think, you know, he grew up in, you know, the same, like, time period that we did, and it's like, you can't be fucking, you have to be original. You know what I mean?
Oh, right.
Like, it's not enough to have a mohawk. You have to have, like, the hair coming out of the side of your head or something crazy, like, because you can't, you have to be different. Like, it's so he just is like, I can't do these obvious things that people are suggesting, even though it might be better. And also, obviously, I'm not talented enough to think of something good that people haven't thought of, so I can't actually think of an original thing. So what do? I'll just be contrarian. That's really what happened. Like,
yeah. It's really unfortunate, too, because there's the almost infamous interview with Mark Hamill, and
we got to think about the fans. And he said, no, we got to think about the story, and we got to think about our movie.
And you can't help but feel for the guy, but at the same time, you have to remember the climate before Episode 8 was, yay, Star Wars is back, let's not make the next one a rehash. And fans were just anxious for something different. And
Yes.
I hate the fact that, unfortunately, we got something different, but it wasn't. I don't want to say too different. It was just a bad story. It was a bad story. It doesn't matter how different it was.
Right. It's not about being and in a lot of ways, it was not very. It was just kind of like a generic space movie. Like it wasn't like. People talk as if it's like, just like they say, it's like it subverted your expectations. So like, as if it's like some radical thing. Like it's just kind of this like boring, stupid space movie with like a lot of plot holes. The only impactful parts where you're like, ooh, this was cool, had to do with like old characters that really had nothing to do with Rian Johnson. It was more of a nostalgia thing. That was the only reason you even had any feeling that you were alive while watching the movie is because of stuff beyond his control. So like his actual input in the movie, like really had nothing to do with any of his story, which was terrible. So and it's not like some innovative thing. Like he took the easiest, lamest, and like most boring path that you could take. It wasn't innovative or different. Like if you could have made it like we had weird cinematography and taken all these risks and done something. And if it was a good story, I would have been on board. Like I'm not like such a huge Star Wars fan or a purist or something that I'm like I just want something that I can watch that's coherent, and that I feel like I'm immersing myself. I can suspend my disbelief and like this has nothing to do with Earth or anything with like this is a galaxy far, far away a long time ago. So there's nothing in it that, has anything to do with the planet Earth right now. It's like, I don't care. Like, it's like, I just wish that it was just like, here's this crazy space story out in the middle of nowhere that has nothing to do with anything with Earth. And it's like, you can, of course, because it's written by humans from planet Earth, it's going to have social commentary. Like, hey, I think this is written by somebody from Earth. Like, I get it. It's going to have a little bit. If you want to be daring and bold, try to make it so it's not like that,
Absolutely. And we may never know where the social commentary came from. It could have been Rian Johnson's first draft, and that was what he wanted. It could have been someone else at Disney saying, hey, you need more animal rights, you need more strong female characters, and he did his best with, okay, I'm going to shoehorn these topics in here, and then he submits draft number 2, and they're like, okay, cool, you can check those boxes off.
I think it's like a I don't think there's like some grand conspiracy to like put in this stuff. Like people are like, oh, Disney is trying to whatever, and people have a lot of conspiracy theories about whatever, about like there's like some overarching, like I don't think it's that necessarily. I just think it's kind of like a cultural osmosis, like it's a cultural shift where like people are just kind of absorbing this information. It's like a feedback loop. And so, like, they just feel like, fucking, I don't want, like, a hit piece from BuzzFeed or whatever it is. And so they're, like, trying to avoid that. But then also they're like, hey, people will think I'm, really cool if I'm, have this opinion because this is what everybody likes. And I don't want to be a bad guy or whatever. So they, like, I think it just kind of picks up like that. Like, I don't think it's, like, a lot of this, like, political stuff. Like, I don't think it's, like, a conspiracy or, like, there's some executive at Disney, like, I don't care about profits. I care about putting my political message in there. I don't think that happens. Right. I really don't.
People love to argue that point with no proof.
Right. I mean, if somebody proved it and said, "Oh, here's a memo," the Pentagon Papers, the Vietnam War, or something like. If somebody has proof, then I'm like, "Oh, okay, I stand corrected."
But it's all.
But my guess, based on zero proof, is that people are they have these political beliefs individually, and collectively. These individual, beliefs kind of like coalesce and they feed off of each other and they grow, and now it's just in everything because that's just part of the culture. It's like, rock music wasn't prevalent in the 50s, but now it's everywhere. It's kind of like that thing. It's not like there was a conspiracy to like, there's somebody sitting in a meeting like, we need to spread rock music everywhere for Satan. It's like, it doesn't exist. It just naturally, culture just grows and develops organically. And so I think that's just a natural development. So in that case, it's very, like, formulaic and boring, because it's like, oh, you're just, like, going with the flow. This isn't bold or different.
It's pandering, and that's, I don't think the original Star Wars trilogy...
It's very normal.
Pandered, did it? I don't think it pandered to anyone. It told, like, a nice, clean... it's something everyone could watch, and no one felt singled out by it. No,
Right.
And the new stuff has yet to really do that.
I think the thing is that like I was invested in New Hope emotionally because of Princess Leia's revolution, and when Han Solo said that he wasn't in it for her revolution, I was crushed.
Look, I ain't in this for your revolution, and I'm not in it for you, Princess. I expect to be well paid. I'm in it for the money.
On the subject of Han Solo, I think when Lord and Miller do...
Oh yeah, we're talking about Solo.
Well, we're talking
not
about
the steaming pile of crap that is Last Jedi.
We're talking about where this podcast is about a movie we haven't seen. But one thing is for certain, I hope that Lord and Miller release their cut, and it's just called like Solo, a Star Wars story, we shall first.
Oh, that would be good.
Sorry about the mess.
I think we all fantasize about what's in the Disney vault, and I'm putting that in quotes for those of you who can't see.
Right.
So that cut, if that even exists.
He did use quotation marks.
Thank you. See, someone knows.
Witness.
When
you say Disney Vault, I just think of Scrooge McDuck diving into the gold.
So we'll see it at some point.
Yeah.
And we'll have a review.
I'm sure it'll be fine. Like, I'm sure I'll be mildly entertained.
Mm-hmm.
I think it'll be probably similar to Rogue One, where it's like I watch it and I'm just like, it's not like a life-changing experience. It's just like, it's like watching Doctor Strange, where it's just like, oh, that was cool.
Mm-hmm.
That wasn't a total waste of 2 hours.
But it was fun.
Yeah, I got to sit in the dark and watch something. Hey.
And you've read all the spoilers for Han Solo? For Solo?
Yeah, I know everything
you know
about it.
The character that shows up on the projection?
I do, yeah.
Okay. So,
yeah. They bring the holographic Tupac.
Yeah.
Which I just don't understand. Oh, no, that was Coachella. I'm sorry. No, they have,
It's true.
Spoiler warning.
Please.
Darth Maul.
No!
Oh.
It's even Ray Park.
Yeah. All right.
But
yeah,
not his voice. I don't know. I think it's the voice actor from the animated stuff.
Oh. Well, they didn't use his voice in the first one, did they?
No, but it was still a different guy than the guy that did him animated.
Oh my god.
So
weird.
There's two Darth Maul voices and one physical Darth Maul.
Can you imagine, like, in 50 years when they're doing, like, Star Wars Celebration? I guess it would be way up there in numbers. I don't even want to say it because I would be so wrong that it'll be embarrassing.
Yeah.
Whatever one it is, way in the future, and there's, like, 5 people sitting at the Darth Maul booth, and it's, like, these 5 old guys just sitting there, and then, like, a little kid that's, like, watched them on his, hollow disc 8000, whatever people are watching things on at that time. They'll be like, oh, I watched these old movies, and, like, wait, which one of you is the red guy?
Oh, no.
And it's like this line of old men.
At last we will reveal ourselves to the Jedi. At last we will have revenge.
And one of these days I'll watch some Clone Wars action and some Rebels action.
Yeah, I've never watched any. That's the one thing about me too, is like I've never watched any of like anything other than like the actual movies for Star Wars, and I've never even read the books. Although I was given Heir to the Empire book sometime in the 90s. Somebody gave me that, the Timothy Zahn book, and I had it for like 20 years, and then I just sold it to Half Price Books, and I never read it. So I owned it for like 20 years though. It sat on. I basically carried it on a shelf, and I never read it. I briefly played the Star Wars RPG, the old Weston Games RPG. Like I briefly played that, the tabletop pen and paper game, not like a computer game. Just to show you the level of nerdity that I'm dealing with.
Did you DM or did you have a character?
Oh well, of course I DM'd.
Okay, that's what you do.
Yeah, I'm a control freak. No.
How many Jedis were in your party?
There was one Jedi actually.
Only one?
Yeah.
Okay. I always thought that everyone would want to be Jedis, and that's why.
Yeah, and there was an evil an evil Force user that was like a frogman. It was like a frogman that was like the evil bad guy, like the boss guy. That was the main antagonist. But anyway, the last thing I want to do is talk about some old campaign.
RPG.
Yeah, some RPG things are the worst. It's like literally the worst thing you could do.
Can't be as bad as The Last Jedi.
That's true.
I'm sure. I'm already interested. Tell me about this frog guy. To do backflips, to be a lightsaber.
He had a lot of strong opinions about women's rights. No, I'm kidding. This is terrible. Now everybody's gonna think I'm like such a bad person because this stupid joke. I'm a big proponent of human rights in general. Just because I'm laughing at the statement women's rights doesn't mean that I am a bad person. I really am not. Honestly, I don't even have a problem with, like, I don't care about Rey. Like, people even say, like, the whole Mary Sue thing. I just don't even care. Like, I like Rey. I like the character. I don't mind. It's a little childish. Mm-hmm. But I'm okay with that. Like, it's a little bit, like I said, it brings back, it's like that nostalgia in me, where it's like you have this character that's so powerful for no good reason, and it's like, like I said it in the last one with, like, Hulk Hogan or something. It's like Superman. It's like, although Superman has a reason because he's from another planet and he absorbs energy from the sun. So, I mean, but you know what I'm saying? Like, if Superman didn't have a reason, if he was literally just Clark Kent the newspaper man and he just, like, woke up one morning and was like, I'm the most powerful person. That's it. Like, it's still cool to see him, like, save the world or whatever. I'm fine with it.
It's true. I mean, and I love The Force Awakens. I have trouble poking holes in that movie because it's a good movie and it's a great
You can nitpick any Star Wars movie.
Right. I just wonder, like, what...
It's just better. I mean, it looks a lot better now after Last Jedi. That's another thing, too. Is like, I liked it. I was like, okay, this is a good setup for the rest of the trilogy. I hope it's good. Mm-hmm. I enjoyed it. I was entertained. There weren't any, like, big, obvious plot holes or anything. The world building was weak. It was a soft reboot. There's all kinds of little criticisms about it. Like, but I kind of, it's like I like the new characters well enough. Like, it didn't have, like, the major, huge, giant flaws that Last Jedi has. And so it's just, after watching Last Jedi, it's like, oh my god, it like, a lot of people will be like, oh, well, it ruined the whole trilogy for me. But it's like, for me, I think it made Force Awakens better, but just because in comparison it's so much better.
Oh, absolutely.
But I mean, it does ruin all of those cool mysteries, led nowhere. I mean, it's ruined in that sense, so I mean, I get it.
It's just a roller coaster. Like, Force Awakens was great. Star Wars is back again. And then Last Jedi, like, Star Wars is gone again. Yeah. And that's a rocky, emotional journey for any Star Wars fan.
You sound like a battered spouse.
It's true.
It's like, I thought he changed.
Even back in the 80s or 90s, you had those guys that really didn't like the Ewoks and probably didn't like Return of the Jedi because, it's a...
Right.
It's because of Ewoks or whatever. Even then, you're like, okay, there's only 2 movies. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
2 out of 3 was the best you could have hoped for some people, and then it only, like, got worse.
Yeah, there's literally people that they haven't liked a Star Wars movie since 1980.
Yep. It's hard to please everyone, and I understand that the process is daunting, but back to The Force Awakens, it's just that the name, it's called The Force Awakens. Like, there's a person that The Force Awakens in.
Yeah.
And, why? I still don't know.
A good question for another time.
Exactly.
A good question for another time.
Yeah, no, I get it. I understand why people, don't like Rey. That's totally valid criticism. Like I understand logically why people would have a problem, and I'm like, oh, I agree. Mm-hmm. That is weird. Like, I wish she had a cooler origin, and Rian Johnson really did a great job of fleshing out her backstory and explaining everything.
And
just kidding.
And I actually really like seeing her scrub random parts and scavenge and stuff.
Right.
And you see her, like, in the Death Star or the Starkiller base. In the beginning, she pulls out this random piece of that. What's it? A ruined Death Star.
Yeah, it's a Star Destroyer.
Excuse me. Yeah. And she pulls out this piece, and she's using it for junk to get money and green bread. Later in the film, pulls out that same piece in the Starkiller base, like, to...
Right.
She struggles. Like, there is struggle in the character. Like, that's...
Right.
I think she's cool. I just think there's just a missed opportunity to make her even cooler.
And he said, no, we got to think about the story, and we got to think about our movie.
I thought of a better example. Yeah, I thought of a better example than Superman for, like, the whole thing where, a character that is, like, unexplainably just, like, great, but it's fine. It's one of my favorite characters, personally. It's what got me into reading comics. But a lot of people see him as, like, a pretentious douchebag. I'm talking, of course, about Mr.
Mr.
Fantastic.
Fantastic.
Yes, of the Fantastic Four. So he goes up on a rocket. Everybody's saying like, "Oh, Johnny Storm's a hothead. You know, he's the fire. Ben Grimm is rough around the edges. He's the gruff, you know, rocky guy. You know, Invisible Girl, she's shy. Oh, I'm so shy, and I'm just, you know, a wallflower, and so she's invisible and can make powerful force fields that could kill you, and you wouldn't even know it. But I don't know what that part of her personality. I guess that's something else deep within that they didn't talk about in her subconscious. And then you have Mr. Fantastic, and it's like he's always like curious and stretching out, and so he's like, you know, stretchy guy. Also, he's the most intelligent human being that's ever lived. He's like super genius, smarter than Tony Stark, smarter than anybody else. Like he is just this super genius. And it's not really explained. It's like, was that part of his gamma radiation? He was already a brilliant scientist before he went up there. So it's like, you kind of just like, but people don't really, you know, are like, oh, why is he so smart? It's like, if you think about it, there's like 8 billion people that have, you know, on the planet. Well, you know what? There's 130 billion people that have lived. You know, it's a guess, obviously, but like, that's the best guess that people have is like, there's over 100 billion people that have lived in human history. There's like 8 billion people right now. Over 8 billion. One person is the smartest person. Think about it. Somebody is.
So at any one point in time, yeah.
Right. So whoever that person is, that is the smartest person, and I'm sure it's really close. Like the rest, you know, the race is like nose and nose. I'm sure there's not somebody that's like far and away smarter, like Mr. Fantastic, but one person is the smartest person. So it's like there has to be, mathematically, somebody has to be the smartest, or even if it's a tie, 30 people are just as smart as each other. You can't really measure. It's not really measurable, like how smart somebody is really. You know, you can measure do all kinds of testing and stuff, but like you don't really know. It's like, is this person smarter? Because there's so many variables, and what do you mean by smart, and all these things. But anyway, you could do it like an IQ test. Oh, an IQ test would tell you, you know, who has the highest IQ. But just when I'm saying smart, I just mean in a broader sense, like who's the smartest, like all these different factors. So anyway. So Mr. Fantastic is just like the smartest guy. He, you know, has this photographic memory, and he knows everything, and he can solve problems really well. And but it's not really explained ever, and it's just kind of like, okay, he's just really smart. Gamma rays hit him or something. So it's like, and I'm fine with that. So it's similar with Rey, like where
a comic book.
Yeah, like
hero.
I don't mind that she's like this super, like I said, if she's the most powerful being in the Star Wars universe, fine. I mean, I'm expecting some kind of reason, or a complete, like, I guess the way it's left right now, it is a complete mystery, but it's just, that's not as fulfilling.
I mean, the same argument can be made for Darth Vader. Like, why is he all powerful?
You're
Does
right.
every powerful character need an explanation, like an origin? Like, not necessarily. It wasn't until the prequels that they still didn't explain why he's so powerful.
I think I need to see more. I need at least 3 movies of Rey as a little girl to really flesh out the character. I think George Lucas should write them.
And she needs to have a mother with no father. You know, same thing.
Yeah.
The Force chose the mom. Like, you know, we didn't need Vader's backstory, and we don't need Rey's. We really don't. Like you're saying, it's either give us a backstory and explain it, or don't. But the 2 parents being junkards that sold for drinking money is. Neither side wins. There's 2 groups of fans. Keep it a mystery, J.J. Abrams box, or we want an explanation for Snoke and Rey and all this stuff. Yeah. He chose neither. Because
he wanted to be different. He wanted the side mohawk. Mm-hmm. You know, like, I'm doing something different. Yeah. I'm going to pierce my knee. Because none of the kids are doing that.
I call this the subvert your expectation talk.
I'm a trendsetter. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so, you know, it's like, all right. Well, that's the worst possible choice, but I mean, I guess if you were really trying, you could make it worse. But
well, it's weird because Vader was cooler before he got a backstory. I mean, it's hard to make Vader less cool. You kind of just have to imagine he's always been awesome. Vader. Yeah. Rey was cooler before she got an explanation.
Yes.
Yoda's still cool, no backstory. Yeah. Boba Fett's gonna get a movie. Now we hope that's just a movie that doesn't explain backstory.
We already saw him as a little kid, though.
Yeah, imagine how crazy you'd sound when someone was like, all right, the Clone Wars, what's it about? You know, like, it's actually an army of Boba Fett dad clones. Yeah. You know, like, he's got a dad, they clone him. It's really convoluted. It's just a mess. The Clone Wars name is so cool. You know George Lucas just did it because it sounded cool. And it's really hard to write a story called The Clone Wars without either having clones of people, Jedis fighting clones of themselves, or actual.
You had an idea for Clone Wars, and I actually liked your idea. If you want to explain that.
Oh, sure. Yeah,
We'll cut this part out. Don't worry.
Yeah, thanks. Well, for years we've all wondered what the Clone Wars were. If you're an old school fan, I always thought it had to do with Jedis being cloned. Someone was cloning Jedis somewhere, but Jedis are pure wandering samurai. They don't have a core sanctum in a city. They don't live in New York.
Like a big Mormon temple.
Yeah, they don't do that. They wander, but there's something, whether it's a dark force or an evil organization that starts to...
Like Disney.
They start to clone the Jedi. They start to kidnap and clone each Jedi.
Sounds like Disney.
One at a time. And you can't just clone a Jedi because they have a certain amount of power and mystique to them. It clones the dark version of them. Because every Jedi has some amount of dark in them. So some Jedi, you're going to end up with a clone that's very powerful because they've got deep, hidden darkness in them. And then other ones, you're going to have a weak clone because it's running off dark fuel.
It's like Multiplicity with the different Michael Keatons. And
oh, yeah.
You get to the third one, and he's, special needs.
Exactly. It's diminishing returns.
Right.
For sure. But I haven't obviously ironed out every detail in this story, but the climax of this trilogy, the Clone Wars, Jedi have to fight clones of Jedi, dark versions of themselves. Most comic books have had this. You have to fight the evil version of yourself. It's a rite of passage in many Bronze Age and Golden Age comics and Silver Age comics. It's just a thing. So all these Jedis in the Clone Wars have to fight each other. Unfortunately, Anakin loses and dies to the clone version of himself. A young pupil of mine named Darth Vader hunted down and killed and murdered your father. So it's still very true what Obi-Wan would have said at that point, that
from a certain point of view.
From a certain point of view. It's not always one-on-one, but in Anakin's case, he loses to the dark clone version of himself. That's the version that goes on to be Darth Vader, and the true good pilot, good friend Anakin died at the hands of his dark side. Literally, the dark side version of himself.
Still my favorite is the one that you showed me, though, and it was another YouTube video, which we could put a link at the bottom to it.
Yeah, we'll definitely link it.
Yeah, we'll
it's
link
the,
it.
What if episode 1 was good?
Yeah.
And then there's,
It's a great prequel. He does the whole prequel trilogy.
Yes.
And we'll put links down there, but it's definitely worth watching, because in my mind, that's actually what the prequels were. Mm-hmm. Those are the prequels for me now.
At this point, you should write your own episodes 1, 2, 3, and 7, 8, 9 if you really want.
I'll keep. You know what? I'll keep 7. I don't even know. Honestly, at this point, I'm just. And I'm sure 9. Even if 9 were the greatest movie ever, it can't erase 8. You could have the best bread. This is really good artisan Italian bread with the herbs and all this stuff. Mm-hmm. But the middle of that bread is just dog shit. This is going to be a bad sandwich, So no matter what, the top of that bun might be the best. Oh my God, episode 9, it's so good. This bread, it's just out of the oven, fresh smell.
But if Luke was treated better and got one badass scene, this podcast might not even exist. Imagine Rey in 30 years. They make episode 18. And Rey's, given up, turned herself off from the Force, milking space cows, milking moofs.
Moof milker.
Exactly, she's a moof milker, and
they should have made Luke a nerf herder. He's out there like a shepherd.
Nerfing,
just herding nerfs.
Yeah, herding nerfs and moofing milks.
Yeah, milking moofs. I don't know about if you want to moof and milk. I don't know what that is.
Milk. It does a body good.
I mean, see, and here's where I disagree with you. Because obviously, I wish that they had just made 3 movies with the original cast. Even though they're old, I think that's kind of what people wanted. Obviously, the best parts of the movies for me had to do with the original cast. Yeah. I don't mind the new characters. I like them. I like Finn and Rey specifically. However, I think they should have just said, okay, we're just going to make these and we'll introduce these new characters, but then we'll have the new trilogy later. But the fans, they wanted some closure in their lives. I grew up with these characters and, finally they're going to do something with them. And then it was just, they treated them like shit. It was just garbage. But for me, that wasn't even the biggest gripe. It's just, a lot of the story didn't make sense. The whole, chase, logically, the things don't make sense if you think about them. Like all of the stuff that has to do with like changing the way, you know, the space battle work, and like all of these little problems that, you know, to me it's like all of those like plot holes and logic mistakes. Those are the things that ruin it for me. I can't suspend my disbelief and engage this movie. Like, oh, this is a fantasy film, I'm like watching it and I can't do it. I'm just like, oh my god, this is because it's so bad. The actual, like, you know, I don't like how they treated Luke. Like, I wish they had done the original characters and made it their trilogy and just introduced some new characters at the same time. You know, they didn't. So, but it really, like, the only part of Last Jedi I liked were parts with Luke in it. You know, a few scenes with him. But I mean, for the, you know, if I were choosing, yes, I wouldn't have him like that. You know, like all jaded and because it's really not
murderer-y.
Yeah, because and to me, that's not even like a new take on. That's like so old. That's like something that would come out like if that was new and fresh, it would be something like in the mid '80s, early '90s, where it's like we're gonna take Captain America, but we're gonna make him drunk. Or I think they did the Iron Man as an alcoholic in the '70s.
Yep.
Like so, it's just it's old news. Like it's not even like a new story. Like, oh, Luke is, you know, all jaded, and it's like, wow, what are we going back to the early '90s where the anti-hero phase? Like,
I think Luke should have went through that phase initially. Is like, I don't train anymore, and then, you know, he sees enough promise in Rey where he's like, fine, I'll open up Cobra Kai again. You know, and we'll do it, and then it's a great show where they treat the characters with fucking respect. But
right, like that's one thing I like about Rey is that she's very optimistic and she's kind of like Luke was, you know.
Oh,
so it's the same thing.
That's the problem from a writer's point of view. She's too much like Luke.
Right.
You can't have two Lukes. You know, otherwise, they would have been ready. He's like, what are we doing here? Let's go rescue him. Like, let's, you know, fucking Han died. Let's make sure nothing else bad happens. Let's go. Just go.
The fact that the three original main characters, you know, Wonder Woman, Batman, and Superman. I mean, Luke, Han, and Leia. The fact that they didn't meet up. I mean, you have 3 fucking movies. You bought this thing for $4 billion. You have 3 movies. You have a generation that grew up with this, you know, mythology. They just didn't think it through, or I don't even know. Like, it's such a huge writing error in my mind that they didn't do more with those characters. And I mean, that had to have been like, I don't know if that was a directive where, you know, Disney is like, people don't care about Star Wars. They want new characters. I don't know. Like, it just seems weird to me.
Maybe they were nervous about their age and they didn't think people wanted to watch older people run around with it doing adventures and stuff. But they had Han do it. I mean, Harrison Ford. A lot of the blame, if you don't like these films, can be put on Harrison Ford for stubbornly just being, you know, if he only comes back if they kill him, and I think that's very obvious by now. It's like
but they could have, but still, he was in that whole movie. Mm-hmm. He was all in it a lot.
Yep.
And they could have just been like, okay, you know what? You don't even have to do the whole trilogy about the original characters. Just do episode 7 is like closure. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like, I feel the same way about Star Trek 6. I'm going the Wayback Machine here. Star Trek 6, Undiscovered Country. It was like a nice send-off for the original crew from the original series. Mm-hmm. And then here comes Generations, which a lot of people don't like it. I actually like it, but I agree with people that have the complaint that it wasn't the best send-off for the characters. Like, and that's why like Leonard Nimoy didn't want anything to do with it, because he's like, I liked the way everything was wrapped up in a nice bow in 6, and that's when the original cast should have just stepped away. But they didn't, and they were in 7, some of the cast, and it was just a weird like handing off of the torch. It just wasn't. I don't know, it just wasn't very good. Like, and I agree in that sense. And it's the same thing with this now. Like, okay, well, let's do this handing of the torch thing, but it was just so sloppily done. They should have just said 7 is going to be like a send-off for the original Star Wars people. Mm-hmm. You know, Luke, Leia, Han, they're going to have one last adventure. We're going to introduce these new characters and leave cliffhanger at the end, so you're wondering about, like, well, what's going to happen to the new characters? Han could die. Luke and Leia could be like, oh my god, you know. Yeah. Whatever it is you need to do, but just write a movie that would tick those boxes where people were like, okay, it felt like Star Wars, I got my nostalgia fix, wrapped up the original 6 movies or whatever, and then you can move on to the new people, which I like the new characters, and I'm sure people would still go see it, you know, but they just didn't even care. It's like they were just like, Luke, Han, and Leia, like, who cares about those characters? It's not about the characters in the movie Star Wars. It's all about, people care about the fucking, spaceships and explosions.
And Kathleen Kennedy has been quoted saying that
the main thing is to protect these characters, make sure that they still continue to live in the way that you created them.
Oh, well then I stand corrected. I am so, you know what? I'm totally wrong then, yeah. She's...
Mark Hamill famously talks about how he wanted to be the one in the snow to get the lightsaber. As beautiful as that moment is, and Rey catches it, and the Force Awakens in her, and it's cool.
I'll tell you where I thought I came in the forest, when the lightsaber goes like this and flies off. I said, oh, what a great entrance. Ah! Rey caught it? She hasn't even been to Dagobah for training. What's the deal?
There should have been just one moment, how are things? Same as always, that bad, huh? It's just so sad that they weren't reunited. That's it. It's just, it makes you feel very sad. Yeah. Especially now that Carrie's gone, it's just impossible. We just can't go back, and it forces you to just, if you're really uncomfortable with these new movies, you have to just buckle down in your original trilogy and ignore that everything else happened. And I'm an open-minded person. I don't want to just... Star Wars fans shouldn't be this divided. There's going to be some kind of people versus George Lucas, but people versus Kathleen Kennedy, or people versus, Star Wars fans they've got podcasts, they have t-shirts, they have organizations that are just set on just no Disney Star Wars from here on out.
Star Wars fans have a lot of opinions.
They do, and I'm sure, I almost want to interview, a kid about the new trilogy. What do they think?
Right.
Because obviously...
a rational, sane person that isn't, totally just so caught up in everything like we are.
Yeah, exactly.
It's you're normal.
You're a normal
What do
kid.
you think of this movie? They'd be like, I like the part where the ship went through and killed everybody with the lady with the crazy hair.
Maybe a little older than that, maybe.
Yeah, okay. But it's cracking a window to get fresh air. Mm-hmm. It's what are we doing in here? Just in this musty basement talking about how we hate Last Jedi, and it's get a grip on reality.
I know.
No.
There's that,
But yeah, it would be interesting to hear a fresh perspective of somebody, especially what if there was a kid, say it's a 10-year-old.
Sure.
And they've never seen the original trilogy.
But this is...
And they just went and saw Force Awakens. Mm-hmm. And I've only seen Force Awakens, and they're I liked it, but I don't really like it enough to go watch the originals. Who cares about those 6 movies? So they just watched it, and they were oh, another one's coming out. I'll go watch that. And they watched Last Jedi. What do they think? We need funding from the government to do this important research.
It's true. Maybe Poe is, some kid out there, Poe is their favorite character, and they just can't wait to see what Poe does.
Oh, God, let's not talk to that kid. I don't know. I didn't care about, I don't like Poe. I really was I think in the first movie it was ruined because they kept, clumsily just saying what a great pilot. They say it 3 times where it's oh my God. The last time too is just so embarrassing, where it's just he just was looking up in the sky in the middle of a battle. People are just getting killed, and oh, you just got shot. All this stuff's danger going on. He's just
that's one hell of a pilot. Woo-hoo!
He's at a fucking air show. So it didn't make sense. It was stupid. And it just, Poe just seems it was kind of boring. And then in the second movie, he played a whole big role that was just this whole stupid command fight thing, which to me seems like a giant Battlestar Galactica ripoff of the officers fighting amongst themselves on a ship that's and it's okay, this is you're just, the whole thing is stolen from Battlestar Galactica, the 33.5 episode or whatever. But I feel I just don't like that guy. I don't care. I mean, I have nothing against him. I don't really, it's not I hate him. Oh, I'm gonna make a YouTube video where I hate Poe Dameron. I just don't care. He's just a boring character. I just don't care about him. It's the little droid that gets turned upside down and gets his feet burned in Jedi, Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
He's cool, but I just, I don't care. And that's how I feel about Poe Dameron. Yeah, but the difference is Poe Dameron's in the movie way more.
Every movie, have you noticed, his X-Wing gets destroyed? At the beginning of the movie?
Well, because he's such a great pilot.
That's one hell of a pilot!
He takes after his idol, Harrison Ford.
It's true. Well, both... But yeah, he has a different X-Wing in 7 and 8, and they're both destroyed. And 9, he's going to have... So, if you want to buy Poe's X-Wing, he's going to have 3. Got to think about them toy sales.
Well, from what I've heard, toy sales for Star Wars, died, and they've never come back. Like the prequels killed off toy sales, and they just have never returned.
Geez.
There's still like Force Awakens toys that just aren't selling.
You know what?
I've seen videos.
The best toys. If you guys haven't seen the best Star Wars toys ever, and this is cost aside, is the Kotobukiya line. Kotobukiya Star Wars toys are like the best. They make the Black Series look like Episode 1 toys. And the Black Series is kind of, it's pretentious and expensive, and I'll put a link in the description.
Star Wars Black Series for the true collector.
Black Series is fine, but Kotobukiya is like where it's at. If you want to spend like $80 a toy, it's where it's at.
Which,
but
I mean, who doesn't?
Who doesn't? But the solo toys, that's the thing. As much as I love dishing on The Last Jedi, there's a lot of videos out there that go to like Walmart and Toys R Us, and they show like, oh my god, there's no toys on the shelf. Like, they're not restocking them. No one cares, you know?
Right, that's actually, that's exactly the videos that I was talking about, yeah.
But yeah, then you're like, well, no one cares. They're not restocking them. These figures are still from, Episode 7.
Right.
Like, it's a barren wasteland of Star Wars inside this Toys R Us or Walmart.
Right.
Let alone, like, the Toys R Us isn't ordering because they're going out of business. Not
That's true,
specifically
yeah.
Star Wars. And then you go, like, you see another video, and they're like, oh my god, the pegs are totally stocked. Like, no one's buying them. They're all here. No, they're...
Right.
So no matter what, like, they're gonna... Some like, doucher is gonna walk into a store with a camera and be like, there's so many, no one's buying them. They can't, they're falling off the pegs. There's too many.
Yeah.
No one's interested. Or there's none because no one's ordering them and it's a barren wasteland. So no matter what, they make it look bad. The fact is, the toy sales for Star Wars are not public. So people just make shit up, whatever
Right.
fits their narrative.
And I think people just can't, like, there's just so many of these just, like, losers that have just so much time in their hands that they can just, like, waste it just obsessing about Star Wars all the time.
I feel bad for those people.
Yeah. Anyway, so Last Jedi, I mean, it's so terrible.